Grandma Magic Live, a special live stream of our podcast from the Grandmother Collective. We're a nonprofit organization that supports and advocates for a world where a grandmother's power is seen, cultivated, and activated for positive change. Usually, Grandma Magic comes to you as a podcast, but today you're joining us in real time. Our format will be a little different. Francis and I will talk for about 40 minutes, and then we'll open it up to take questions from the chat here on this platform. You might also be watching us from YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. We're glad you're here. My name is Lindsay Farrell, and I'm your host. Today, I'm honored to welcome Francis Jeffries, a grandmother, activist, and lifelong peacemaker whose life has been defined by her pursuit of justice and community resilience. Francis holds a PhD in counseling from Kent State University and has spent her career weaving together education, service, and activism. She's a Rotary Peace Fellow, a mediator, and an outspoken advocate for nuclear abolition, calling nuclear weapons the #1 public health issue. At the age of 84, she marked her birthday by hiking 84 miles of the Appalachian Trail to raise awareness and inspire action. She's also known locally for plunging into icy waters each New Year's Day to raise funds for ShelterBox, supporting communities displaced by conflict and disaster. Through it all, Francis has shown us that determination, courage, and care can fuel movements for change. Her story demonstrates that grandmother leadership is about both steady presence and bold action. If you'd like to learn more about the Grandmother Collective, please visit grandmothercollective.org. There you can sign up for our newsletter, become a member, or join in the many conversations we're having about how older women, who like Francis, are driving change in their communities and across the world. So let's welcome Francis to Grandma Magic Live. Thank you for joining us. Hold on, let me get you off mute. So Francis, I'm just going to throw out an early question of why are you here today? What is the issue that feels most urgent to you right now?
Well, for me, it's nuclear weapons, but I think underlying it, and especially for today, I see the wisdom of my other grandmothers and people like us not being utilized fully. And so today, I really like to talk more about that and about the nuclear weapons abolition. We don't know much about either one.
No, we don't. I mean, you came and joined us at a Grandma Collective coffee chat, which is just this open forum where people come and tell us about what they're working on and what are the issues that are driving them. And all of us sat there with our mouths like, oh goodness, we have not been paying attention. So why do you think it's so incredibly important that older women take a stand on nuclear abolition?
Well, let me just back up a little bit and say that until a few years back, I knew a little bit about nuclear weapons. I knew they existed, but honestly, I wasn't paying attention. And I happened, quite by chance, to be in a lecture presentation. And 1 hour after I entered, I came out knowing information that my family and my friends were completely unaware of. And basically that what we've done as human beings is to design weapons, things that will destroy not just us as humanity, but the entire planet. And I really didn't have any idea of the danger. And I thought certainly grandmothers don't want this for their legacy. So that's how it happened.
So where did the commitment come from you?
So the information I got that night was from a well-known nuclear weapons abolition activist named Ira Helfand, and he, together with some others, founded the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, IPPNW. And they've formed some other coalitions with other groups. But that information was what kind of propelled me forward into this work. My own background was in organizing a lot, in initiating change, in connecting people. And so I am not the scholar on nuclear weapons abolition. I am not the foremost public policy person, but I am a contributor to the networking of people, to pulling people together and working together. And so that's the role that I've defined. And I think that's the opportunity for other grandmothers, is that there's a role for you in all these um, concerns, but figuring out what you can do at this with your own circumstances and with your own skills and experience.
Yeah. So I wonder, before we move on, because I want to really dig into like a conversation that you and I have had before, which is about your journey to become a change maker and to feeling like, you really can make this, you can participate and make a difference. Um, but I wonder if others might be interested, because I am, in sort of understanding the scale of the challenge that is being faced currently when it comes to uh, this particular issue that you're trying to address. Like,
Okay.
can you give
Uh,
some like, can you give
yeah.
us some like detail?
Okay. So again, this isn't. There's a lot of technical expertise. You're going to get the uh, pretty simple
No,
version,
the thing that
and
makes you
so
feel, what's the thing that makes you feel for this? Like, what are these
right.
kind of
So
things?
one of the things is that there are, give or take, 200 countries in the world. Nine, nine, less than 10, hold all the nuclear weapons. Everyone else is held in hostage. So everyone's in danger around the planet. It's going to be equal opportunity. But only nine leaders will probably make the decisions. And in many cases, it would appear that a tiny handful of people will make a decision for the entire planet. And it might, most likely, it would happen between two countries. So let's say there are two hands full of these decision makers. It's highly unlikely that among those decision makers that there would be any grandmothers who could say, "Time, wait, no, you're not doing this." Um, so you can get the sense of the attitude. Again, a good reason to get other voices in there. So then these nine, two hold the most.
Mhm.
And so I'm not going to get into naming countries and that sort of thing. I want to stay focused on what the danger is, because it could be any two. And it they come in different sizes. So let's basically say they're small, medium, and large. 80 years ago, we used the first atomic bomb. And we have pictures of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the mushroom cloud. So that was the largest at that time. Now, 80 years later, the largest is 1,000 times what that was. So just kind of as best you can in your imagination, imagine not just Hiroshima, but 1,000 times out from that. So we've been told, based on scientific models, that of the largest ones, that 6 or 7, and remember there are 14,000 of these, not the largest, but 14,000 total.
Mhm.
So we've got all this arsenal. Only 6 or 7 would wipe out the entire planet, and whatever would remain. Um, so let's say you remain, there would be no infrastructure left, no buildings. So there's no recovery left. And the ash goes up high into the atmosphere and creates a blanket over the earth. So the sun can't penetrate, nothing can grow. Whatever remained after the first detonations would starve to death within 2 years at the most. You really don't want to be around for that part. Um, so there were a couple of things in that talk I told you about that
Mhm.
got my attention. One is that one of the audience members asked what you should do. if there's a nuclear attack on your city, let's say, and the person said you want to run into the explosion, and the person said, no, I mean, what should I do? And the person repeated the answer, run into it. And his remark following that was, you don't want to be surviving this. We've seen the pictures of burns and so forth. I don't want to get into too much grim detail,
No.
but I do want you to know how awful this is.
Mm-hmm.
And we've not even really thought what this does to the universe. So there's no escape route. The
Yeah.
second that got my attention um, is you go along listening and listening, and then all of a sudden you're just listening. Your mind is racing. The International Red Cross is the primary convener of organizations to respond to disasters around the world. So an earthquake happens, and they're the ones who call the meeting, and then they do an assessment, and then usually they go to regional organizations to help with the response. And they have sort of a template for responding to fires versus earthquakes versus floods, etc. And then there is a response to nuclear disaster. There is no plan.
Mm.
There can be no plan.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, that's really bad.
Yeah.
And so then one more piece. So you say, okay, well, let's say we don't use them, we only test them, which is probably a silly thing. But anyway, let's say we test. So we look at where these get tested. And typically they're tested in areas where people have no voice, they have no choice in it. Um, and in the past, at least, they've been misled about what was going on. None of this is any surprise, but the consequences are very long term. And more recently, we learned from studies that while it's bad for both men and women, that the women then transmit the effects of the radiation to the next generation.
Mm.
And so it doesn't stop with just the individuals who are directly involved. In addition, we know that it poisons the land and it poisons water.
Mm.
And so the place that you were living and where you're still staying because you don't have another place to go um, becomes unlivable. So
Mm.
you die a slow death,
Mm.
and that's the public health issue. That is,
Mm.
I mean, to uh, it's to me, it's equivalent to the kinds of testing that led to the protection of human subjects in research policies. Um, the grim experiments on humans,
Mm.
except this is on big groups of humans and on their land. And
Yeah.
so those things got my attention, and I thought people have to know about this and understand the choice. I think for most of us, the choice that's being made for us because we
Right.
aren't in the room where that choice is made. Which I'd
So
say.
one of the strategies I know, I mean, obviously, I don't want to. I'm definitely feel like I should take a pause after you share um, incredibly devastating information. But I really, we're here to talk about the efforts that you're making and that others could be making. Maybe not necessarily in the same issue, although this one obviously is incredibly important. But in anything that they feel that they can make an impact on. So, what have been your particular strategies taking on something that is so big that so many people want to pretend is not there?
Mhm.
Um, what are your what does it look like? What do you do on a day to day basis as part of your activism?
Well, again, um, some of my colleagues are quite expert in issues related to policy, some in negotiation, Some are in the health sciences and very knowledgeable about that. And some of these things overlap. Again, my piece is to be scanning all this and saying, where can I knit people together? Where
Mm,
can you push the hardest today? And sometimes that means writing or calling US legislators. Sometimes it means following people on LinkedIn and then making a contact with them. And I do this in one role. I do it primarily through Rotary and through
mm-hmm.
networking there. And because of Rotary's position as a 501c3 in the United States, they would be limited in what they can say about political issues.
Mm-hmm.
Our argument is this is neither not political uh, because it's not partisan.
Mm-hmm.
It is universal and it is a serious public health issue. And Rotary's taken many stands on public health issues. It is tricky because Rotary is such a large international organization, and there are many national points of view that come into play.
Mm-hmm.
My job, I think, as a Rotarian within Rotary, is to keep people talking about it
Mm-hmm.
and find the place where you can talk together. Everyone would acknowledge these are pretty bad. Some would posture that the evil, the badness, is justified.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have to use them against you, it was justified. Um, Not all agree. And
Mm-hmm.
so making sure that people who are quieter about it and who feel intimidated by this justification have a way to place their voice into the discussion.
Yeah.
And that one thing Rotary can do within that 501c3 piece, and any group could do, is to convene other people to say, let's get together.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing you can do is connect people. Say, the two of you need to make sure your numbers are coming from the same place, let's say. Something simple.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you discuss which data set you're going to use and why you're using them? Third is we can educate people, give them the information, and they can do this. And finally, and this is the part, where I think you and I would come in, especially, is we engage people. We
Yeah.
get them to say, what do you think you could do? And I've explained what I do, but there's a whole list of things people can do. And there are different organizations to show different ways of acting.
Mm-hmm.
And then people can pick what they're comfortable with, what's in their locale, whatever. And the final point is if none of this has gotten your attention, then you might want to look at what the costs are, let's say in the United States. And there are a couple of websites which you could request through grandmothercollective.org that would allow you to put in the zip code if you're in the United States
Mm-hmm.
for your town, and it will show how much is going to military spending, but also how much from your town budget from the federal government is going to nuclear weapons. And you
My
can just,
town budget is going to nuclear weapons?
your town probably receives some federal funding.
Yes.
Okay. So some of that, you would have more.
Ah,
Well, let
if
me
it wasn't
relay
being,
that.
yeah,
But
I might
okay,
have more if it wasn't being
exactly,
sent towards
exactly.
security or
So
something.
the
Yeah.
part you're not getting is, among other things, going to nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
If that's okay with you, don't write to your legislator. If it isn't, then just scream into the
Mm-hmm.
letter and say, or into the communication and say, I didn't know this. And what do you mean you voted for this?
Yeah.
So, um, so there are many, many levels, and there, some days we have energy and opportunity to act in one way, and some days it has to be another way. I think that's okay. I don't
Yeah.
think you have to be this committed, driven person who makes the headlines. because there's got to be thousands behind that to make that work.
Mm-hmm. Francis, I know one of the things that we kind of hypothesize is that the reason that older women can have a powerful place to participate in some of these big existential challenges and the local, maybe less existential issues, is that there is a power in the remembering, right? That grandmothers can help us to remember, and tell stories. And I know that that was something that you were really working on with people who were the grandchildren of people that had been affected, uh, by a nuclear, disaster or accident or things like that. Can you speak more about that?
Mm-hmm. Those people were actually victims of the testing that I talked about
There
a
it
little bit
is.
ago.
Yeah.
And in virtually every case, and there are several places around the world where that happened, the now grandparent age people were told not to speak about what they experienced, and so they were silenced. And fast forward and skipped a generation to their grandchildren. The grandchildren began saying, there's a whole period of time you don't talk about what happened during that time. And the grandparents said, well, no, nothing really. They brushed it off until finally um, one would finally speak out and say, oh, it's time to tell my story, because now this is my grandchild asking. And then these grandchildren, through the network of people who work worldwide on abolition of nuclear weapons, began to be acquainted with each other, and they now work together. But that's fairly recently that they're working together. They have produced some films that are available, and those, a simple search on the internet will bring you to any films on the nuclear weapons testing and the effects on populations there. But that part, I think, is really important, and I think it underscores the importance that we agree on about the storytelling that you do. So you're telling both your personal experience, but also pointing a person to the larger issues, and balancing those two things,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then bringing all those groups together. Um,
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why we are having this conversation today, is to understand, you know, here's this big challenge. There's a lot of people out there, maybe not as enough, maybe not everyone, trying to make some change in it. But uniquely, that there's a role for for older women or for grandmothers to play in this. Did becoming a grandmother shape your activism? Like, was there some sort of shift in you? A lot of times I have conversations with people and they're like, yeah, all of a sudden I realized, like, I had not been paying attention. Or is this a piece of a lifelong thread for you?
I'd say it's a piece of a lifelong thread. Um, it's easier and more popular to say, oh, it was this epiphany when I had my first grandchild, but I think the timing coincided for me uh, to become a little more active at the time that the granddaughter was first born. So I don't think that, but
It
for me,
collided. Yeah.
yeah, I think as far back as I know, I was curious about things, and was the person who would explore, would open the door, would do stuff that, particularly in my generation, we were supposed to be sitting still, and I wasn't. And then that fast forwarded. So the first time I can remember thinking, "Oh my goodness, I believe differently than that person," and I'm standing up for it, but I didn't know I didn't plan it. Was it? I wrote a paper on Rosa Parks and her activism. Really, just it was not. It was almost like a little report. It was a very primitive thing that I wrote. And my teacher came over and leaned over my desk and said, "You'll have to change your topic." And
And is this like right after it happened, around the
yeah,
time it
yeah,
happened? So it's
yeah,
really
right.
present
I mean,
in
it
the
was
public.
my source material was a Life magazine article to
Oh,
give you an idea of the level of
yeah.
sophistication of the high school I was in. But nevertheless, so I'm just basically regurgitating what it was almost like a book report. And I shook my head no. And I don't know where that came from because I was terrified of him. And I was at the time really shy and felt pretty awkward. And I just shook my head no. And he said, "Then I will fail you in this class," which we needed for graduation. And I needed to graduate to go to college.
Hmm.
And everyone in the class, I think, was frozen. I don't, I wasn't looking up. But afterwards, I thought, where did that come from? I didn't know I had it, but it just happened. And then when I got to college, I was fortunate enough to have a couple of professors who nurtured that kind of thinking. And um, it, over time, because of my childhood experiences involved lots of moving and traveling. Um, I was more interested in global things than I was local because I didn't ever know where local was going to be. And so um, I got interested in international relations, and I've kind of carried that with me. But then the timing was such that not only did the civil rights movement explode around that time, but feminism, all the environmental concerns, um, and all the related pieces to that. And one, again, walking through the door, going to a lecture. So it was nothing, there was no profound opportunity. I didn't meet anyone world famous. I didn't become world famous. It doesn't, you don't have to do that.
No, you
And
don't.
so, so the, do you have time for two quick examples? These are not
Yeah,
related to
we do.
nuclear weapons, but they're related to, I'll tell them because I want people to know that you just have to take whatever opportunity you find. So I had, this all predates any technology. So meetings were in person and everything was on paper.
Hmm.
And somewhere I learned that the, um, that women in the state I was in were, by law, were not allowed to work in a job. This would have been paid employment, of course, because you'll laugh when you know what the restriction was, where you might have to lift more than 40 pounds. I lifted 40 pounds with two kids and two bags of groceries. I mean, I'm thinking, are you kidding? And so that was step one. And then we were at intersection of two, an east-west major artery and a north-south. And so there was a lot of trucking that went on. It meant that women could not work on the loading docks, but you could work in McDonald's. Now, you might lift 40 pounds worth of potatoes and whatever else you had to do, but, and on the loading dock, you had a forklift. The difference in pay was that at that time, McDonald's paid $2.10 an hour. The loading dock paid
Oh my
$19.75
gosh.
with benefits, with benefits. So it was protected by the union, full health care, etc. And the woman couldn't work with the forklift, but you could work in McDonald's. And of course, you could do your unpaid work at home. And I thought, this is stupid. I didn't know where else to go. So I went to the unemployment service. And so I had two children in tow with me. One was in school. And we walked in, and I said, I need to talk with someone about how to change this legislation. And the person said, well, it's not actually our office that could do that, but you could go to the congressman. Great, I'll go to the congressman. So I went and said, did you know this? And the person said, no, I never encountered. So it was, it was an obscure rule that you wouldn't encounter until you couldn't get the job.
Mm-hmm.
So the law was changed. And then I was working with a women's group in the community, and we began to announce it every place and said, and made sure the union knew. And it wasn't easy to be a woman on the loading dock for a long, long time, but you could have your job, and if you could tolerate the nonsense, they muddled through and they kept their jobs, and those. So it's just sometimes these simple things that you can see, you just can move.
Yeah.
So
You also told me a story that I have been thinking about a lot, um, about what you were doing in your town when people started to try to scare off families, uh, like kind of a redlining situation, and that you started to create community in order to address that.
right, another person was more knowledgeable and more savvy about that sort of thing. But we were in a community that was divided by an interstate highway being constructed. A very common story across the
Mm-hmm.
United States. And so people were displaced from that area. Most of were people of color, and they were encouraged to move up the hill to our community only. But if you moved up there, then you could only buy in certain pockets of neighborhoods. But when that happens, you don't have to read very far to understand that you get white flight and all
Mm-hmm.
the property values go down and so forth. And it was an older section of town, but it had been very beautiful, still was beautiful. Lots of trees, a variety of sizes of homes, but all very nice. And it had been the place to live for a long time. And there were also a couple of religious groups that organized themselves around their churches, and so they wanted to stay there, but they were afraid, and you know, the same stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
so when she announced that we'd have this meeting, that and then we, I thought this is something that I want to help with. Plus, I was motivated. We had just put all our money into a new home in that area, and so I had a little bit of that kind of investment. I thought, wait a minute, this is my community. What do you mean property values are going to drop? And and we bought there because we really liked the richness of it. And so we began just having meals together. And the high school cooperated by letting us use the cafeteria. I wasn't working on those details, but just know that there are places that would welcome that. And honestly, if you can't do that, you can always ask for part of your street to be blocked off, and you just pull tables out and have a party in your street. If you
Mm-hmm.
can't get a building, then figure out something, but get people together and let them see each other and play each other's music and whatever you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
There are variations on the food thing where you can do music instead, or you can dance or artwork, or
But
uh,
I remember you said that you had to bring enough for 6 people. Like
yes,
bring a
yes,
dish that could feed 6 people, which
right,
is which is like enough for a family,
yeah.
and therefore you're really just showing up.
It's
And
showing up with your
it's
own
no,
dinner.
yeah, with your own dinner, it's no
Yeah,
expense,
yeah,
and that way you said there were just you did this many times. It was a
oh
lot
yeah,
of
yeah. We
dinners.
just started having. I don't remember now exactly how often we did. It seemed for a while. It felt like almost every week, but I don't. I think it was probably every 2 or 3 weeks. I don't know. But you can make up your own schedule.
Yeah.
Again, do what your community and your weather allows, and uh, you know. Um, but let people come together, and there. we have there were fewer constraints about food and that sort of stuff then than there are now. Um, but yeah,
It doesn't mean you can't find a way around it and
you
get
can
back
find a
to,
way. Yeah,
yeah, you
yeah.
can find a way.
And I think
Um,
again, coming back to grandmothercollective.org, I can bet that among us that there are people who would help facilitate that, just as
mhm.
we'd help facilitate difficult conversations like nuclear weapons.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I wanted to end on because we got 4 minutes and then I'm gonna open it up to questions. So if you have any questions, you can start putting those in the chat. I've been ignoring the chat, so if there were questions there, I'm gonna look at them in 4 minutes. Um, but Francis, I mean, what's sort of your dream of like what what would you like other women who are trying to figure out what their legacy could be? I don't really like the word legacy, but the thing that they're really going to leave for the next generation. What would you dream when it comes to thinking about this thing that you're really passionate about?
Mm. So I guess I would say do something. And so it doesn't matter. There's plenty of work. So I've given you lots about my own passion right now, but it's not necessary for everyone to be doing this.
Yeah.
And grab hold of what you can and just begin. And I would say, taking a lesson from my own experience, don't hesitate to call people. The worst that happens is they don't call you back or they don't write back, and
Mm-hmm.
then you just move on to the next resource, um, and eventually someone will connect with you. If you're in the United States, especially in Canada, I would urge you to use your public library, a tremendous resource, and in my view, underutilized. And I'll put in a pitch for two dates, really important dates coming up. One is the International Day of Peace on September 21st, and the second is the International Day for the Total Elimination of Nuclear Weapons on
Mm-hmm.
September 26th. And so, on that, the second one is a little harder for people usually. Ask your library if they would do a film series for you.
Mm.
And there are a number of film series that are personal testimonies. They feature some of the groups we've talked about earlier. And yeah, and then invite someone to moderate a conversation. And you could do that more than just on September 26th, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely focus on that. So
Is
those are
this
just a few
Yeah,
ideas,
because this
but
is the
just do it.
80th.
Do it.
This is the 80th anniversary of Hiroshima, right?
Yeah.
Or just passed.
Yeah, so that was that. The bombings actually happened in early August,
Mm-hmm.
and then the testing of uh, the bomb that was made famous in the film Oppenheimer
Mm-hmm.
was in late July,
Mm.
and then sort of a week later they dropped the bomb on those two cities.
I mean, one of the things I think I dream of is that we can build a network where all of these issues are amplified. So even if this isn't the one for you, it doesn't mean you can't now take this new knowledge and drop it into your dinner conversation. Let your friends know what you learned when you were having while you're having coffee. Um, all right, so Francis, let's see what we've got in the chat. Oh my gosh, there's so much. Can you see the chat? I think you can.
I
Let's
can.
see if there's any questions. I visited the museum. People are just commenting. Let's see if there's any question. Okay. Linda says, Francis, you talked about community building through bringing people together. Could you expand on the results of that community building, the benefits that you saw from that? So I guess we kind of, maybe that question came in, right around the time that we finished. So you want to expand on anything related to that?
Yeah, I think it's really important to go in with unexpected outcome. So, for example, if I give this talk,
Mm-hmm.
what do we expect? And so what I would hope is that people would respond to grandmothercollective.org and say, I've committed to writing 10 letters. I've called my legislator. I've scheduled an appointment. I've gone to the library and scheduled a film series. I want to know what action actually happened from this.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, is the most important metric. And then following that, I want to know what you expect from that action.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you go to the library and you have a film series, do you ask people to stay and write 10 letters, 10 emails?
Oh.
And there are tons of templates of letters. So it's not like they have to write this whole letter. Basically, you're copying it, tweaking it a little for your own voice, and then sending it in.
Mm-hmm.
Do something that pushes something forward. Don't just attend and take it home.
Karen just put in the chat her email. So if people have actions or expectations that their actions and expectations, they can forward those on to Karen. And I'm about to put
Exactly.
up our website so folks can also subscribe to our YouTube, follow us on social media, sign up for our
Yeah.
newsletter, and get involved in connecting with a bunch of women who
Mm-hmm.
are trying to make change throughout the world. Alex asks for the grandmothers listening, and I guess you too, Frances, because you're a grandmother. What are some ways to involve children and grandchildren? I think this is a critical question that I wish I had
Mm-hmm.
asked. So the next generation understands these dangers and is prepared.
Well, it's pretty hard to talk to young children about nuclear weapons, but what you can talk about is that sometimes people think that they feel in danger and they hit back at a person, and then that doesn't have a result that you really wanted. The other person hits back and so forth. But you can make some choices if you sit and talk together. You can make some choices if you say, this looks like it would work, let's say, as a deterrent, but it's actually too dangerous, so we can't have it. And children understand that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
They understand what's dangerous, certainly by the time they can verbalize. And so I think you talk in more general things, talk about our accountability to each other, as long as we're on the planet, and maybe beyond too, but I'll say just for now, as long as we're on the planet, we're accountable to each other. And so helping children say, what does that mean in their experience, and then how do you get them engaged? And I think as a parent and grandparent, to understand that no matter what you aspire your child to do, the most important thing, in my view, that you can instill in them is that they're a world citizen. And
Mm-hmm.
I like to say they're a universal citizen, but you can take your choice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if every child believed that they were a world citizen first, and they might have an occupation as a physician or as a podcaster or whatever it is they want, that's just their occupation. It's not their life. Their life is to be a world citizen.
It reminds me at the very beginning of this conversation, you were saying, maybe they believe that having nuclear weapons is a thing that like they want to pay for or that they want that's important for our security. Um, but I think we haven't really like the title of this was that you're a peace builder or peacemaker or something. We haven't really talked about how we shouldn't need to have
Mm,
that justification, right? And I think what you're speaking to is how do we raise a generation and support a next generation that doesn't feel that there is a need to protect ourselves with something so dangerous.
yeah. Um,
I didn't ask a
that's
question.
I think suffice to say that there is. ton of material on um, what what would support that individually and in groups of people, and then what would knit all those groups together worldwide.
Yeah.
We typically don't practice that, and we as even as parents and communities, we don't have an active practice usually. There are a few communities that um, teach um, nonviolence, teach conflict resolution, but it's not really practiced worldwide. And those are right now they are anomalies. And right in 2025, we also aren't doing much to emulate those. And say, what could my community do? What can we learn from those? So I think part of it has to be a willingness and a certain level of trust to take the first steps.
Hmm.
That's in short supply. So if you can't do anything else for your community, try to do things that will build the trust that you need to move forward.
Um, Alex's second part of the question that I didn't get to, but I actually think is also really important. Is there any work that's being done about what it means to prepare? I mean, you said like we don't have emergency. Uh, there's no emergency plan for what happens when a nuclear weapon hits.
No,
Um,
in the 50s, we used to have these drills in school,
I know you get under
and
your
to
chair.
protect yourself from a bomb, which was probably the atomic bomb, you were supposed to get under your desk. Now,
Yeah,
if you look at the pictures of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, your little school desk was not much
not
protection.
enough. Yeah.
In fact, it was an exercise in futility. People also built bunkers, and um, they were going to go into these. I've forgotten exactly what they were called, but anyway,
Bomb
and we
shelters.
we had a civil defense force. It was a whole volunteer civilian group, and they promoted these. I mean, in earnest. But again, um, after you come out of your bunker, and there's nothing left except ash. Um, there won't. Let me just, as an aside, say that there won't be rubble because
Yeah.
these weapons evaporate everything. So there's nothing. Um, it's really hard to explain because we've not experienced anything like it. And I think what I and others who are working to abolish these weapons is to say you cannot have these because they are so destructive.
Um, what's on your plate for your next major project?
Um,
That's from Joy.
yeah, so I guess I'm always scanning things. Right now, this matter of keeping trust has a lot of my attention because I can say all these things, but if there's no trust in a community, if there's no trust in other communities, especially among decision makers, um, then it doesn't matter what we decide because you distrust so badly that you won't act on it anyway.
Right.
And so that's got to turn around. It's got to be a certain level. In my own experience, I've never observed the levels of trust so low as they are now. And that's worldwide, I would say.
Yeah.
But you can't function when you distrust you because you even doubt yourself after a while. And it means you're not valuing yourself. That's a whole other thing. So I just work on that a lot and try to weave that into opportunities I have to speak, opportunities I have to have conversations, to influence programs. Um, and the second this is more of an action than what's on my plate, is I would urge people to get online, ask the questions you want to ask, be on these um, um, webinars and chats and other things with groups that you think are similar, like Grandmother Collective. And, honestly, I showed up because I was curious, and I wound up, um, kind of bringing the conversation to a bit of a screeching halt. But, um, you're not sure if you'll be invited back again, but here we are. And I think because people on these, on most of the sessions I'm on, are listening for something that will be a breakthrough.
Mm.
And so, and the other great thing about that is that generally they're people with great hope and great energy and full of intent.
Yeah.
So,
I find that truthfully, the work I've done with grandmothers and older women has been the most hopeful work. It's work. I think maybe getting it from the lens of someone who's has gone through some cycles of life,
right.
makes you believe that actually, things are never static. What we are currently experiencing doesn't have to stay this way. That there is an opportunity for change. Um, I have a question from Barbara. She says, "Can you describe the strategy of the back from the brink movement?"
Um, I'm peripheral to that. I'm not central in the planning. Um, I would I would say go to their website, but basically right now they're working with the U.S. Congress to make some changes. The United States possesses the largest number of nuclear weapons, and without the United States taking some action that would begin to eliminate those, the other countries are not going to follow suit. They've,
Right.
that's not a guess. They've actually said that, and they certainly behave in that way. So getting our Congress to do that and to at least um, suspend the expenditure of the budget. Um, so I would go to backtothebrink.org.
Mm-hmm.
Back,
Karen just dropped it
back
in the
from the
chat.
brink, excuse me, backfromthebrink.org. Um, and I think that, yeah,
I
it,
think she found it as preventnuclearwar.org.
okay.
But I think
Yeah,
it's right.
okay,
Yeah, so
PNW.
that
Yeah.
that was just dropped in the
And
chat.
there's quite a bit of information. There are a couple of opportunities to be online with groups that are planning these um, uh, contact with the legislators through direct contact and through mail, and other opportunities to work on kind of background things. So if you're good at graphic design, there may be a role for you in that, and there are many other actions, and always fundraising. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, in my case, I'm not. Uh, I guess I had wearied of making phone calls to raise money, which is why I did that hike last year. I thought I wanted to do the hike, and I thought I'll ask people to pay so that I
Yeah.
can take this hike. And so I was able to raise what I thought I would raise by making phone calls.
Yeah, you don't have to. A lot of people don't like asking for money. There's
No,
even really creative ways to do that
right,
too.
right.
Yeah,
And I
interesting.
think all you need to do is contact Back from the Brink and or any of these organizations. They'll respond, trust me, and you'll find a role for yourself.
Hmm.
Um, so the
Um,
other I would say is on these when you come to this, for the most part, people don't care who you are or what your past is. They want to know what you can do right now,
hmm.
and will you actually deliver on what you say? And if that happens, that really is the credential for
Hmm.
carrying out the work. There's nothing magic, nothing secret.
You don't have to have a master's degree or 25 years of experience. If you
No,
care, you're passionate, you have a computer or a
Yeah.
a
And
voice.
you can learn what you need to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nancy also she wanted to know if there were letters, that you have letter templates, but those are things that we could push out for you after the
Right.
call for folks that registered. So if you have some letter templates or things that some actions that are happening, we can push that out. But she also wanted to say thank you for sharing. You have depressed me and inspired me to take some action. So we can hold both of those emotions at the same time, both
Exactly. It is
depression
exactly.
and an urge to make change in the world.
Hmm.
Before I close this out, is there any final words that you want to share, or make sure that we are kind of walking away thinking about?
Well, I think first of all, don't let people talk about your age. Um, for the grandmothers out there, it's about your wisdom and it's about your current contributions. It's about what your capacity still is, and then thank them for their interest, but that you've got other things you want to redirect the conversation
Yeah.
immediately, because you're going to have only a short time that people are paying attention, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and you want to say, but let me tell you what I am working on, and I
Mm-hmm.
need your help, and I'll be calling you. And yeah,
The,
so
that actually, like we've been saying all along, you're an asset for all of those things that they think maybe you're not an asset for.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much. Thanks to the audience for joining us.
yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna put up this last screen so that folks can at least have our website one more time. We do have a YouTube channel that you can subscribe to, and social media on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. We have a monthly newsletter that is chock full of stories like Francis's and has lots of opportunities to engage and get involved. As I shared, we've got lots of storytelling programs, a monthly storytelling circle that you can add your voice to our collective wisdom. And this coming Tuesday, September 2nd at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, you can join our monthly coffee chat where we share with others and learn about initiatives around the world. And don't forget that today's live stream will also appear on the Grandma Magic podcast. So subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts to catch this and future episodes, and listen to the previous 30 some odd episodes with really incredible women like Francis, who are just trying to get out there and make the world a better place. It's filled with inspiration, insight, and the extraordinary stories of grandmothers who are shaping our world. Thanks again for joining us live, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you,
Thank
Lindsay.
you, Francis.